In the quiet before Sunday, you can feel that a turn has already started, even if the room around you still looks ordinary. The coffee cup sits on the table, the phone lights up and dims, and the same old worries try to enter through the same familiar door. Yet something in you is no longer agreeing with the old atmosphere, and that is not small. You may be standing in a kitchen, a bedroom, or a small corner of your day, but the change is not waiting for permission from the place around you. It is being revealed in the way your breath changes before your plans do. It is being revealed in the way your shoulders loosen when you were certain they would stay tight. What looked like another weekend may be the edge of a passage you have been circling for a long time. You do not need to force it. You only need to recognize that not every delay is a denial, and not every silence is empty. In that first hour of waiting, God often begins by quieting what was shouting inside you. The world calls that nothing. Heaven calls it preparation. You have lived long enough to know the difference between noise and direction. This is why your spirit keeps pausing over details that other people would ignore. A small stillness can carry more truth than a loud explanation. And once you notice that, you stop treating the moment like a leftover and start treating it like a threshold. There are moments when the days around you look the same, but the meaning underneath them has shifted completely. You may open the window in the morning and hear traffic, birds, or rain, and still know that something deeper is moving than the weather outside. The body notices before the mind agrees, because the chest becomes quieter, the hands stop clutching, and the old panic loses its voice. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazara readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. That is often how God begins to open a door that fear had kept labeled as closed. You used to think a change had to arrive with noise, proof, and a crowd. Now you're learning that some of the greatest turns begin like a candle being lit in a dark hall. The light is small at first, but it changes what you can trust. You were not abandoned in the waiting. You were being taught how to see differently. That is why the same hallway that once felt heavy can now feel like a place where your steps are being measured for wisdom. A cracked mug on the counter, a folded shirt on a chair, and a message left unread can all become witnesses that your life is not stuck, only being reordered. When the inner world shifts, the outer world starts to look like evidence instead of punishment. And evidence is a gentler teacher than fear. It says you are not imagining the movement. It says the turn has begun. It says you are not late to what is coming. You may have carried a hidden sentence for so long that it became part of your breathing. I have waited, and I do not know what is happening. I have prayed, and I still do not know why the door stayed shut. I have kept going, but the pace has not matched the weight in me. That sentence can live in the throat like a stone, especially when Sunday is near and you expected a simpler answer. You see the plate on the table, the shoes by the door, the unfinished task on your desk, and all of it seems to ask whether this will ever make sense. The heart leans forward while the memory keeps pulling backward. And in that tension, the old interpretation says, you have been overlooked. But another truth is rising, quieter and stronger. You may be in the exact place where God is teaching you to stop measuring movement only by visible results. Think of the way a seed disappears before it is seen again, or the way a path through a forest looks blocked until the light hits it from another side. That hidden work is not wasted. It is forming depth where speed would have only created noise. If you keep naming every pause as failure, you will misread the very season that is carrying you. If you receive it, you will notice that your life is not resisting you as much as it is maturing you. And that is a harder mercy, but a truer one. You are not being asked to pretend the waiting is easy. You are being asked to tell the truth about what it has done in you. The shoulders that used to rise against every small problem have started to drop in exhaustion, and the body is telling the story before the mouth does. The room may be clean, the bed made, the dishes stacked neatly, and still the soul feels like it has been awake for too many nights in a row. That is why the promise of a coming turn matters. It speaks to tired places, not just inspired ones. You have been carrying invisible weight while trying to look composed enough for everyone else. But God does not mistake composure for peace. He sees the private strain, the long stare out the window, the quiet sigh after another unanswered question. This is the kind of season where Proverbs becomes more than a verse and becomes a posture. Trust is built when understanding is incomplete. Not because confusion is good, but because wisdom can live inside what confusion cannot finish. The old self wants a map before moving. The new self learns how to walk by a lamp, not a floodlight. That is the difference between control and surrender. One demands certainty first, the other receives clarity while walking. And sometimes the first sign of the turn is not an answer, but the strength to stay tender while the answer comes. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes from being strong too long in the wrong way. You keep answering messages, opening doors, making meals, showing up at work, and the inner life becomes a room with the light left on all night. The body starts to react with dull eyes, a tight neck, and a silence that is not peace yet, only depletion. You know the feeling when you are standing in a line, holding a bag, checking the time, and realizing you have been bracing for disappointment before anything has even happened. That bracing is familiar, but it is not your true home. What is being opened in you now is the possibility of receiving without shrinking. The turn that no one could stop is not merely an external event. It is a change in how your spirit interprets the same old pressure. The same hallway, the same office, the same car ride can become a place where you notice that you are no longer ruled by the first fear that enters. The opposition is real, because delay likes to dress itself as permanence. But permanence is often just delay speaking too loudly. What is being revealed now is that your season has not been cancelled. It has been cultivated. You are not behind. You are being readied. And the moment you stop calling preparation a setback, you make room for the next mercy to arrive. Sunday can feel like a hinge when you have been living through the weight of many closed doors. A hinge does not look dramatic from the outside, yet it changes everything it touches because the whole shape of the room can turn on it. You can stand near a kitchen sink, hear the water running, and suddenly realize your life has been teaching you patience in the language of ordinary things. The cup, the towel, the key ring, the shoes, the clock on the wall, all of them become witnesses that time is not empty when God is in it. That is why the turn cannot be measured only by what has happened around you. It also has to be measured by what has softened inside you. If your reactions have become less frantic, if your prayers have become less decorative and more honest, if your silence has started to feel inhabited instead of abandoned, then the work is already underway. You may still want visible proof, and that longing is human. Yet the deeper proof is often found in how you carry what you once could not carry without breaking. The old story said you would always be trapped inside the same cycle. The new story says, you are learning how to recognize the door by its sound before it fully opens. That is not imagination. That is discernment maturing. And discernment is what keeps you from mistaking delay for defeat. The turn is not asking whether the room is large enough. It is asking whether your heart is ready to recognize the doorway when it swings toward you. The season ahead may not arrive the way you once pictured it. It may come with less spectacle and more clarity, less noise and more conviction, less performance and more peace. You have seen enough false alarms to know that not every loud moment carries truth. A real shift often begins in a smaller way, like a text that changes the tone of the day, a phone call that does not happen, or a conviction that settles over you while you are still washing dishes. Those ordinary interruptions can be more sacred than they look. They force you to notice that your life is not locked in the shape you feared. There is movement where you once only saw repetition. There is direction where you once only saw waiting. If the door is already opening, then the right response is not panic. It is attention. You listen differently when you know a hinge is moving. You walk differently when you know the floor beneath you is part of a path. And you pray differently when you stop asking for proof that God has moved and start asking for eyes to notice where He has moved already. That shift in posture changes everything. It keeps you from living as if the future is a stranger. It teaches you to greet it as a guest that has been sent. The question is not whether you have been through enough to be cautious. The question is whether caution has quietly become a prison. You have learned to protect your heart by expecting less, and that strategy once helped you survive. But survival is not the same as being led. The room where you sit, the car where you wait, the hallway where you pause before answering, all of it can become a place where old caution starts loosening its grip. The body knows when it is tired of carrying yesterday's fear into today's light. The shoulders fall a little lower, the jaw unclenches, the breath comes deeper. And in that opening, the spirit can finally hear what fear had drowned out. What is being released in you is not recklessness. It is trust with memory. You still remember the pain, but you no longer worship it. You still remember the closed door, but you no longer name it as your destiny. That is the difference between being wounded and being ruled by the wound. Sunday carries that kind of boundary. It separates what has ended from what will begin, not because every problem vanishes, but because the meaning of the problem changes. The same hardship can become a witness instead of a verdict. And when that happens, the whole inner landscape begins to turn with you. If you have felt the shift in your chest, if your mind has been unusually quiet in the middle of the usual noise, type the number 888 in the comments. That number is a simple sign of overflow, a quiet confirmation that something in this message landed where words alone could not reach. It is not magic. It is recognition. It is the smallest agreement that your spirit knows how to make when truth passes by. Type 888, then come back to me. Do not rush past what your own fingers are being asked to witness. The turn keeps unfolding when you stay present to it instead of explaining it away. And once you return, you will notice that the same Sunday you feared is beginning to look less like pressure and more like promise. That is how holy interruptions work. They ask for a response before they ask for understanding. They make room before they make sense. And the room they make is often the exact space where your next strength is born. You have probably noticed that some doors only reveal their purpose after you stop arguing with the delay. A locked door can make you feel forgotten, but it can also guard you from entering before the ground is ready under your feet. The sound of a key in a lock, the click of a latch, the small turn of a handle, all of that carries more meaning when you have waited with tears in your eyes. You may not see the whole corridor yet, but you can sense that the next room is no longer imaginary. This is where faith becomes practical. It does not deny the delay. It refuses to declare the delay final. When the mind says the pattern is permanent, the spirit says the pattern is only preparing to break. That is why patience is not passive here. Patience is alert endurance. It listens for the hinge before the door swings. It stands still without surrendering expectation. And in that stillness, you begin to understand that God was not absent in the delay. He was teaching your heart how to receive the opening without fear. That lesson matters because many people can handle a miracle, but not everyone can handle the responsibility of receiving one without turning it into a new idol. Your waiting is refining that inside you now. There are days when the evidence of change is almost embarrassing in its simplicity. You wake up, make the bed, open the curtains, and realize the light in the room feels different because you feel different. The same chair, the same floor, the same cup on the table all remain in place, yet the inner weather has shifted enough to make the morning feel like a new page. You might call that coincidence if you wanted to protect yourself from hope. But hope has become harder to dismiss because it keeps arriving with a steadiness that fear cannot imitate. The body tells the truth by relaxing where it once braced. The mind tells the truth by no longer reaching first for disaster. And the soul tells the truth by recognizing that the waiting has done something holy in you. That holy work has not made you louder. It has made you steadier. It has not made you more impressive. It has made you more available. You are not being polished for display. You are being prepared for depth. The opposition may still whisper that nothing has changed because the whole world has not bowed to your prayer yet. But you know better than to confuse silence with absence. The silence has been carrying weight. The weight has been carrying wisdom. And wisdom is often what the future uses to find you. The turn you are sensing is not merely about relief. And that matters because relief alone can become too small for the size of the mercy being given. You need more than a lighter afternoon. You need a rearranged inside life. One that no longer collapses at the first sign of delay. That is why this season has included both pressure and protection. Pressure has shown you what still needs to be healed. Protection has kept you from settling for shallow answers. At the family table, in the quiet of the car, or while standing at the sink after everyone else has gone to bed, you have learned that God's timing often feels slower than your appetite for closure. Yet slower is not lesser. Slower can be the shape of care. The old interpretation said you were being kept out. The new interpretation says you were being kept safe until you could carry the next room without breaking it. That changes how you remember the last months. It also changes how you enter the next ones. You stop asking whether the waiting was worth it because you begin to see that your capacity was being enlarged inside it. A turn that no one could stop always leaves traces before it becomes obvious. Some of those traces are not dramatic. They are just honest. They are just durable. They are just true enough to hold what comes next. What looks like a small thing now may become the very place where your life changes direction. A conversation you almost avoid, a prayer you almost stop praying, a page in a notebook you almost never open again. All of these can become sites of return. The body does not always celebrate that return at first. Sometimes the chest tightens because hope is unfamiliar after disappointment. Sometimes the eyes get tired because the soul has learned to watch carefully for too long. Yet there is grace in the return because God can meet you in the exact place where you had given up expecting Him. This is where the image of Sunday matters most. Sunday is not just a day on the calendar. It is a reminder that what looked finished can still be touched by a new beginning. The old voice may insist that the pattern cannot break now, not after all this time. But patterns do break when truth keeps entering them. The same light that seems gentle can still expose what darkness hid. The same mercy that feels quiet can still rewrite the shape of a week. You are standing near that kind of mercy now, and it does not need your permission to be real. It only asks you not to turn away from it when it arrives. You may be surprised by how often peace begins as a refusal to rehearse the same fear one more time. The familiar loop says you will always be waiting, always wondering, always almost there. But the Spirit learns to interrupt that loop with a different memory, one that remembers past deliverance without exaggerating past comfort. In the middle of a normal afternoon, while folding laundry or waiting at a traffic light, you may feel that interruption arrive as a calm sentence inside you. Keep going, stay open, do not name this as over yet. Those inner words are not the loud kind of revelation, but they are enough to change the posture of a day. They help you see that God's work is not always announced with thunder. Sometimes it comes like a steady hand on a shoulder that has been trembling too long. The opposition prefers urgency because urgency makes people easy to confuse. But the turn coming toward you does not need confusion to survive. It needs clarity. It needs a witness in you who can say that the last word has not been spoken by fear. When that witness rises, your whole inner world begins to breathe differently. And what breathes differently begins to live differently too. If the image I just walked you through landed in a place you cannot fully explain, type the words "Eu vejo isso" in the comments. Let the recognition seal where it landed. Typing those words makes the witness permanent in your own record. Type it, then come back to me. This is not about performance. It is about agreeing with what was already stirring before you knew how to name it. The turn becomes clearer when you stop resisting the fact that you noticed it. And when you return, carry that quiet recognition with you into the rest of this moment. The same God who notices the hidden thing also knows how to bring it into light at the right time. That is why your answer does not have to be rushed. It only has to be real. Real recognition is the beginning of peace. There is a kind of promise that does not shout because it has no need to compete with noise. It waits until the house is quiet, until the dishes are done, until the screen goes dark, and then it speaks into the silence you finally have time to hear. You can feel it in the way your inner world leans forward when the outer world still looks unchanged. That leaning is not weakness. It is expectancy with roots. A hopeful heart does not deny the hard facts. It simply refuses to let hard facts become the ceiling of reality. The turn you are standing near has that quality. It does not erase what was painful. It gives pain a smaller throne. And once pain is no longer enthroned, wisdom can sit where it belongs. That is why your prayers may start sounding less like bargains and more like surrender. Not because you have given up, but because you have stopped trying to control what was never yours to command. Sunday can teach that better than any loud speech. It shows you that rest is not the enemy of progress. It can be the doorway into it. When you rest in the right thing, you are not falling behind. You are aligning with the pace of what is being built in you. You do not need to pretend that the uncertainty has been easy. It has touched your sleep, your appetite, your patience, and sometimes the way you answer the people closest to you. That is why this message matters. It names the place where the turn meets the tired parts of you. When you are tired, everything can look more final than it is. A short delay can feel like a permanent wall. A single silence can feel like a finished story. But stories are often most alive when they are still incomplete. The bridge has not appeared because you are finished walking by sight alone. Now you are learning to walk by trust, one measured step at a time. The object in your hand, the cup on your table, the key in your pocket, the light coming through a window, all of those ordinary details become reminders that reality is larger than your current frustration. That larger reality does not ignore your pain. It carries it with perspective, and perspective is a gift that fear cannot manufacture. It comes from being shown that the path is wider than the moment. This is how the turn begins to feel less like an accident and more like an arrangement. Not everything that happened was pleasant, but some of it was appointed for this very hour. You may have spent too long trying to make sense of what could only be endured first. That is why your spirit is more fluent now in waiting than in forcing. Waiting has taught you to notice what forcing would have destroyed. It has taught you to listen for the difference between a dead end and a hidden door. It has taught you that not every closed chapter is a rejection, and not every open wound is a sign that nothing good is coming. The room, the hallway, the road, the screen, the seat beside you, all of these places can become part of a much larger testimony when you stop asking each moment to explain the whole story. The old life wanted guarantees before obedience. The new life learns obedience before guarantees. That is a difficult exchange, but it is where depth begins. The turn is often quieter than expectation, yet it is more durable than excitement. Excitement burns fast. Depth stays. And what is being formed in you now is something that can stay when feelings wobble and circumstances shift. You are being prepared for more than a good day. You are being prepared for a stable yes. There is a sacredness in realizing that your life has been carrying more than one layer at the same time. On the surface, you did what had to be done. You answered the message. You paid attention. You kept the schedule. You smiled when needed. Underneath, there was a quieter work happening, one that no one else could see because it was taking place in the hidden rooms of your attention. That hidden work matters because it is where trust is deepened. You cannot always point to it in a photograph, but you can feel its effect in the way your breathing softens when fear would normally have ruled the room. You can feel it in the way your thoughts stop running every possible disaster at once. This is what Sunday does when it arrives as revelation. It does not just mark time, it reveals what time has been doing inside you. The opposition may try to convince you that hidden work is wasted work, but that is one of the oldest lies in the world. Hidden does not mean lost. Quiet does not mean inactive. Delayed does not mean denied. The turn is proving that in you now, one small sigh at a time, and a sigh can be the beginning of a new language. The more you observe this, the more you understand that a divine turn rarely flatters the old appetite for certainty. It asks you to become the kind of person who can remain steady while the answer is still forming. That steadiness shows up in the simplest places. The way you set the plate down a little more gently, the way you pause before speaking, the way you no longer feel compelled to fill every silence. Those changes look minor to the outside world, but they are enormous in the inner life. They mean fear is losing ground. They mean the old script no longer speaks as loudly. They mean your body is learning that not every unknown is a threat. When that happens, the future stops feeling like a cliff and starts feeling like a corridor. A corridor still asks you to move, but it does not ask you to see everything at once. It only asks you to trust the next step. That is the kind of faith that can carry a turn no one could stop. It is not loud, but it is lasting. It is not theatrical, but it is true. And truth has a way of opening what performance never could. The image I have been carrying with you is now beginning to move, and you can sense it because the stillness around it is no longer the only thing present. It is like seeing the first motion of a door that had been sealed in your imagination for too long. You can almost hear the hinge before the door fully swings. That is why the next response matters so much. If this movement has touched you in a place you did not expect, type the words "estu pronto" in the comments. Let that phrase become your way of saying that you are no longer arguing with the opening. Type it slowly, and then come back to me. This is the moment where recognition becomes readiness. The turn is not merely something happening to you. It is something beginning to gather you, and what gathers you will also steady you for the ground ahead. Keep breathing. Keep listening. The opening is not an accident. When the inner door starts to move, old fear often tries one last time to name it as instability. But instability is not the same as transformation. One breaks you apart. The other gathers what was scattered. You can feel the difference in the body because one leaves the chest tight and the jaw clenched, while the other allows the breath to become honest again. Sunday carries this kind of gathering. It does not erase the week that came before it. It gives the week a new interpretation. The same events that once looked like random pressure can begin to look like shaping hands. And shaping is not always comfortable because it presses on what was loose and reveals what was hidden. Yet shaping attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you. And strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.